Naturalize uses gentle homeopathic ingredients that stimulate the body's natural healing response. Say goodbye to harsh chemicals and hello to refreshed, clear, and comfortable eyes. Experience the healing power of nature with Naturalize from the Relief Products.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Kenlon, Senior Vice President at EnsembleIQ and publisher of Drugstore News. Thanks for joining us today. I am with Brad Ulrich, who is the Group VP, Pharmacy Ops and Services at Walgreens. Thanks for being here, Brad.
Oh, John. Hey, thanks for having me. It's an absolute thrill to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So October is American Pharmacist Month, and I Googled that, and I picked up this bit of coverage. It said, from this prominent newspaper, American Pharmacist Month is observed during the month of October. It is a celebration of the invaluable work done by pharmacists and the vital role that they play in society. Healthcare providers deserve all the recognition they get, especially considering their contribution during COVID-19 pandemic, and pharmacists are no exception. So here's my first question for you. Pharmacists came through the pandemic with flying colors, testing and treating millions of patients, but they paid a heavy price as workloads increased. They were met every day with anxious patients. They had lots of questions as well as personal concerns about their own safety and well-being. So what did Walgreens team learn from this experience?
Yeah, John. Well, just again, thanks for having me. And there's a lot in that question. I appreciate some key points you hit on. One, yeah, exactly. The anxiety that our patients had. There's no doubt about it. But you said something very important too. It was the anxiety that our own team members had. Our pharmacists, our technicians, our store leaders, our customer service associates, everybody in our stores were a bit nervous about this pandemic. And as you remember, the CDC was so fantastic to work with and learn from, but the guidance was changing in a lot of cases, a couple of times a day. So one of the things we learned, John, at Walgreens was how can we even better communicate with our team members? We felt it was so important to ensure that we were precise and timely on all of the safety protocols. So there were a lot of changes there. You're wearing masks, you're not wearing masks, you're social distancing, you need plexiglass barriers, all of those things, John. And it was changing with the frequency that we felt. We have always been strong at communicating, but we now even have to over-index on all things communication. And importantly, allow for the teams to communicate back to us about what they're seeing and hearing so that we can ensure we're staying as current as possible. So without question, communication was the key learning. But also very important, John, was this opportunity for our pharmacists to really become even more large healthcare providers across the communities we are fortunate enough to serve. And I'll just give you one quick example. We've been doing immunizations, as you know, for years at Walgreens. One thing we really haven't been doing at broad scale is diagnostic testing. And so as you think about that, we had done some small pilots for diabetes and things, but really nothing of the magnitude that we've done throughout this pandemic, COVID-19, with respect to COVID-19 testing. And so when you think about that, it was an incredible opportunity for pharmacists to show their value about driving more than dispensing healthcare medications or their prescription drugs, of course, but also getting involved in the diagnostic testing. So it's just been amazing. I'm so happy for October to really spend time recognizing our pharmacists. And frankly, we want to do that every day, whether it's October or November or July for that matter. So I appreciate the question a lot, John, and we're really proud of the teams.
Yeah, I think test and treat is a huge opportunity, whether it's for flu, whether it's for strep, whether it's going to be for COVID or God forbid anything else that could happen. It's nice to know that we now have a system for handling that.
No doubt about it.
So burnout, we hear a lot about pharmacist burnout. What are some of the causes and how is Walgreens managing it for its pharmacists and even its technicians?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, John. We acknowledge it's been a tough road for the teams. As I just mentioned, these new services we've provided, the demand for them, certainly outpaced, in some cases, our ability to appropriately deliver, against those. When you have so many people that are looking to get a COVID test or whenever the vaccination was released, the demand for vaccines far exceeded our ability to deliver those. So that was tricky. In addition to that, the work environment, as I mentioned, is strained. There's a lot of phone calls that occur in a given day, of course. We already talked about the concerns our team members had with respect to just staying safe throughout the pandemic. So you start to bring those things together, and it can absolutely be a tricky day for sure. So I'm really proud at Walgreens, a couple of the things we are putting in place to try and mitigate these. And I'll start with just really reviewing our operating hours. And that is an important balance because we certainly don't want to interrupt the continuity of care in the communities we serve by, opening an hour later in the day or closing perhaps an hour earlier. But we found it vital to be able to ensure we could give our pharmacists and our technicians, importantly, time away from work, time that they could refuel and recharge and obviously regain their ability to go in and really deliver extraordinary health care. So we looked very, very closely at operating hours. But in addition, we've reviewed our compensation to ensure that we're very competitive on that front. We've also done a lot of signing bonuses to hire more and more pharmacists to the Walgreens organization, which is a really, really, really critical part to allow us to grow into these new services that we're so excited about, which is a key component of our strategy. So there's a host of things we've put in place, but certainly continue to acknowledge that, as I mentioned, it is a tough road, and I really appreciate everything that they're doing. One other thing I'll mention is just this technology. The way that technology can really help provide a solve for our pharmacists. The digital app is a great example of Walgreens, where when a patient can engage on the digital app, there's a couple of things that happen that are pretty powerful from my point of view, John. One, we see the patient is more involved in controlling their own healthcare. Why that's a good thing is because they become more adherent to their medications. So that seems to be very, very good. And we've got some great alerts and notifications and things to help them be reminded of refills and things. But also, equally as important, it reduces some of the interruptions that come into a pharmacy on a given daily basis, whether it's a phone call or obviously even a patient coming in to ask a question, whenever that in theory could be solved through the app or through chat technology, et cetera. So we're thrilled about that as another way to help our pharmacy teams have a great experience at their work in their work each day.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I mean, everybody likes to be rewarded and everyone likes to be recognized, whether they admit it or not. You touched on technology, which was the next question I was going to ask you. The digital app includes the Find Care component.
Absolutely.
And that's been, I think, very useful. I love the idea that you talked about the patient being in control. It would seem to me that when they're in control, they're more involved and they're probably more compliant.
Yeah, no, John, you're hitting on a really key part in Find Care. I'm glad you brought that up because what's really critical to what we're trying to accomplish in the art of pharmacy at Walgreens is two things. One, accessibility to healthcare, and two, very importantly, affordability of healthcare. So when you think about Find Care, this instantly helps folks identify perhaps where a primary care physician might be, or an acute needs a nurse that can help them through whatever ailment they might be suffering. Obviously, it points out where our Walgreens stores are so our pharmacists can engage with them. So it's a really, really, really great enhancement to technology that we are hearing great feedback from our customers. Some other really outstanding technology that we have that's going to, I think, really help make our teams have a great opportunity to bring this new expanded scope to life is micro fulfillment centers, John. So we've talked a bit about this, but in essence, what that's going to afford is the ability to take a lot of the fulfillment work. Think about it as the filling of prescriptions outside of the store to be done centrally, which then enables our teams to have even more intimate conversations with the patients that they serve and do clinical services. We've already talked about immunizations, but you mentioned diagnostic testing in a far more broad sense than simply COVID-19, but you said seasonal flu, you're absolutely right. Diabetes, testing, and a whole host of other services that we know we can provide. And then importantly, as you mentioned too, the treatment of that as well. So you've got the opportunity to test, you've got the opportunity to treat, and then you certainly have the ability to dispense the medication, all in a way that drives accessibility, as I mentioned, to healthcare, and very, very importantly, affordability. So when we can continue to further leverage technology, John, there's no doubt it transforms the art of pharmacy in a way that makes our pharmacists even be more recognized as the healthcare providers that we know they can do. And COVID has proven.
Yeah, I love that. Free up the pharmacist to do more of that patient counseling. Everybody wins. I'm going to switch gears on you here for a second. I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership, or you're going to talk about leadership.
Okay.
How does Walgreens support pharmacists that want to take on a leadership role, whether that's a leadership role in a store or a region or headquarters or just working with their community?
Yeah, so I feel like I can talk about this actually because I've been a benefactor, a beneficiary, whatever the right word to say would be there, John, of the Walgreens sort of development opportunities. So I started as a pharmacist in our stores and had a variety of different opportunities through leadership, as you mentioned, whether it was having responsibility for an entire store, but then also a district and running an area. Then I had some development opportunities in our corporate office or our support center where I was able to learn a different side of the business. And what gets me the most excited about that, John, is I'm just one small example of how we bring this to life for so many of our team members. So I like to think of it as, if there's something that you want to explore at Walgreens, we no doubt have opportunities for you. In fact, not only do we have opportunities, we need you. So as we look to really transform and grow our strategy to become even more of a healthcare provider, not only is it going to need clinicians, John, because it absolutely is, but it's going to need leaders of the clinicians to really help bring those to life. And that's one of the things I'm the most excited about. We've also launched a couple new roles that I think are worth mentioning. One is our healthcare outcomes pharmacist. So as we know, adherence to medication is a massive opportunity across the US. And so we have designated pharmacists that are specifically responsible for helping engage with patients on a daily basis to help explain the importance of being adherent and learn from the patients. That's a key piece. Learn from the patients about what barriers are getting in their way from being adherent. And whenever we can learn those, we can obviously work together to build a plan for that patient that helps them be more adherent or re-engage with their primary care physician to help understand, is there a different course of therapy that might be best? So I'm excited for that role. And then lastly, we've also created a career path for our pharmacy technicians called our pharmacy operations manager role. And there's two key drivers to this. One is to create that succession plan you mentioned that helps give them opportunities to grow their career and take on more of the managerial sides of pharmacy. And then two, importantly, it allows some of that work to come off of our clinicians that will further enable them to bring through the clinical services we've talked about, John. So I couldn't be more excited about some of this innovation by way of leadership across our organization.
Hear, hear, a career in retail pharmacy. There are lots of avenues. And when I look at leadership across retail pharmacy, you see some very, very senior people, and they started in the stores behind the bench talking to the patient. And it just seems to me there's lots of options, and you've described them well.
There's no doubt about it, John. Clearly, I'm biased. There's no doubt about that. But in my view, there's no better way to bring through the art of pharmacy than serving in the community and really helping provide care to patients that otherwise, as you know, don't often have a primary care physician or someone that they really trust. And so we can certainly help to close those gaps. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
Excellent. All right. So last question. Give us a glimpse into the future. How do you think Walgreens pharmacist role could evolve as they seek to deliver more and better care that at the end of the day improves health outcomes, which you've touched on already, but what happens next?
Yeah, well, I get excited about this part of it for sure, and for a couple of reasons. I think one, when you think about the future, it helps us by thinking about the past a bit, and I'll sort of keep like the most recent past in mind with these last couple of years, because, and I think I mentioned this COVID serving as a bit of a launch pad couldn't be more close to the truth. The reality is our patients recognize this differently today than they might have before the pandemic. I won't necessarily say we recognize our pharmacists differently because we've known the healthcare gaps that they can close and the services they can provide. But I think we're absolutely getting credit for this in a way that's different today than maybe 3 or 5 years ago. And I'm really excited about that. So when the patient starts to think about the pharmacy as a place to get their immunization, or as a place to have a conversation about their medication regimen, or as a place that they can have a diagnostic test done, as we've talked about, John, that to me is a really exciting time. And that's what really fuels my excitement, coupled with the innovation that we have at Walgreens to really help bring this through and make it real. And what I'm starting to hear from the teams that I'm lucky enough to be able to go out and work with, John, is a little bit of buzz, a little bit of excitement, is they're starting to kind of see that come through. For our stores that are now being supported by micro-fulfillment, they're actually seeing moments that matter where they have more time to spend with the patients. And importantly, the data is showing that. The adherence data is improved. Our ability to bring pay for performance to life is also improved. So there's a lot of upside here that we're now getting some really exciting proof points for. But with that said, John, there's a lot of work to do on this front. We've got to continue to drive change across legislation and ensure that our pharmacists can continue to provide these sustaining healthcare services tomorrow, just as they are today. And not only sustain, but create the opportunity for new services as well.
Yeah, make it affordable, accessible, convenient, high quality, and at the end of the day, improving health outcomes.
Yeah, no doubt about it, John.
So thank you. Brad Ulrich, thank you so much for doing this. I hope you'll come back. I'm sure we have lots more to talk about.
Oh, I'd be honored to come back. And if I could, just really to all the pharmacists out there, happy American Pharmacist Month. It's such a thrill to be able to work with all of you. And thank you for everything that you have done to really help our country get through this pandemic. It has just been so inspiring to see, and I'm so very thankful.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for watching. See you next time.